Warframe has over 60 frames, and choosing the wrong ones early on is the fastest way to stall your progression. So today, I'm going to list down the frames you should build that will take you from clearing the star chart all the way to the late game content. Each one plays a role which would unlock the next layer of the game. Now, before we dive in, these frames are my personal recommendation based on my own experience going through Warframe's progression. There's no single right answer in this game, and you might have your own combinations that work for you. But if you're asking me what frames I think will get you to the end game as efficiently as possible, this would be my list, and I'll tell you exactly why for each one. So, let's begin. Your first goal as a baby Tenno is to complete all your main story quests and complete the star chart. You need every node unlocked before Steel Path becomes available, and that means you're going to be running captures, exterminates, defections, ESOs, open world bounties, and a lot more. Given that you get to choose between 3 frames at the start of the game, coming on the recommended list first, in my opinion, is Volt. His second ability buffs movement speed, melee attack speed, and reload speed all at once. That means capture missions where you'll normally spend 2 minutes chasing a target are done in less than a minute. It means bounties where you're escorting a drone from point A to point B stop being a waiting simulator. You just buff yourself and the drone's escort path becomes trivial because you can outrun the entire map. The same speed buff works for defection missions as well. You can easily buff the movement speed of defectors from one extraction to the next. Bolt speed makes escort leg dramatically shorter, keeping the squad group and the mission efficient. Same with any time-bound objectives, Bolt just makes the clock irrelevant. Then there's his fourth ability. In the early to mid-game, this chains electricity across rooms with massive range, stunning and damaging entire enemy groups at once. You walk into a room, press 4 and move on. For exterminate or interception missions where you need to constantly kill, Discharge is one of the cleanest room clear tools available to a new player for non-Steel Path missions. And then, as you unlock Elite Sanctuary Onslaught, one of the most efficient focus farming activities in the game, you can use the same Discharge ability to clear waves of enemies with just one button. It's pretty efficient for focus farming if you ask me for an early player. Volt isn't glamorous. He won't make you feel like an endgame god on day 1, but he plays a part in getting you to the endgame quicker, and he remains useful for contents like Eidolon captures and Profit Takers going forward. Here is a build I would use if I were getting started in the game. Honestly, for weapons, until you get to a point where you unlock the Nadaruk or melee weapons like Broken War or Zorus, using weapons from the Junction reward would work. Your main goal with this frame is to clear enough of the star chart and push through the main story quests unlocking weapons like the Nataruk, Zorus or Broken War, so that you now have the option to either stick with Volt or move on to the next frame I'm going to be talking about. You see, the quests themselves from here on out after New War can start to become challenging, and regular star chart farming at higher nodes punishes frames that aren't modded correctly. Now, this is not something I would recommend, but if you're going ahead and investing farmers and a reactor on your non-prime vault, by all means stick with playing vault as long as you're not dying. However, if you're struggling with staying alive, here's where the second Warframe enters the list. Revenant. Personally, I have played Revenant for almost the entire questline Warframe has to offer and also for Steel Path till I was able to get decent mods to start building other frames. The reason for that is Revenant's second ability, Mesmer Skin, gives him a set number of damage absorbing charges. And here's the key mechanic. As long as even one charge remains, he literally cannot die. Every hit that would have killed him burns a charge and puts the attacker to sleep. With enough ability strength, you're walking around with 15 to 20 of these charges per cast. This is a fundamentally different kind of survivability than most other frames have to offer. You don't need to manage adaptation stacks or shield gate perfectly or carry the right companion. You cast Mesmer Skin, you push through the content, and you recast before the last charge is gone. That's it. Once built, Revenant becomes your seed belt through the remaining story quests and star chart nodes. Think of him as a frame that will help you to get the mods required to build the Warframes that I am going to talk about further in this video. You would play with Nataruk and either the Broken War or Zorus, but once you've unlocked Steel Path, pair him with the Torrid and later Minkanan build, or maybe an Okuko and Burston Prime Minkanan setup, and he's the frame that makes the road to completing Steel Path and farming the mods to enter late game actually doable without constantly pausing to fix your build. Use him as your safety net when you learn, then graduate to more demanding frames as you get comfortable with the game system. Talking about Steel Path, once Steel Path is unlocked, you're now in the real game. Enemies hit harder, armor values are buffed, density of monsters increases, and you get an innate 100% resource drop chance and mod drop chance boost on Steel Path, which makes farming resources really meaningful at this stage. And speaking of farming, this is where Korra earns her place on the list, and she does it in two different ways depending on what you need from a mission. Slap the Pilfering Strangledome augment on her, and every enemy eliminated inside her fourth ability has a flat 65% chance to drop additional loot. On Steel Path, where enemy density is high and rare drops are on the table, this augment turns any survival mission into a significant farming session. Also, once you've completed Whispers in the Walls and unlocked melee arcanes, Korra's Whipclaw becomes something else entirely. Whipclaw is her exalted melee, which means it can equip melee arcanes. Slot in melee influence, and when the arcane activates, every status proc Whipclaw triggers now radiates out as an electrical AoE to every enemy in range. This turns Korra into a legitimate nuke frame for content like Steel Path Exterminate, Interception, Mobile Defense, and basically anything where you need to wipe out massive number of enemies fast and consistently. You're basically farming Orokin cells, Telluriums, Plastids, Polymer bundles, and other annoying resources the Star Chart has to offer on easy mode. She is also useful in getting your Hex Calendar rewards completed with ease, as most of the mission tasks here are to do with eliminating enemies, except tank assassinations and container destructions. At this point in your progression, you're doing Steel Path content, you're farming resources with Korra, and the game opens up into a wider range of mission types like Netrocells, Deep Archimedia at rank 5 with the Kavya, Temporal Archimedia at rank 5 with the Hex, and game modes like Perita Rebellion, Descendia, Ascension on Steel Path, and much more. Now, Korra and Revenant can both handle a lot of these mission types, but they each have their limitations. The Revenant build that I mentioned earlier is heavily tied to the weapons you pair him with, and without those, which would highly likely be the case in ETA and EDA, you're just surviving high-level content without doing damage to enemies, hoping your teammates would carry you through. And Korra, while phenomenal at nuking and farming, she struggles with the high-level assassination missions that EDA and ETA can throw at you. That's exactly where the Warframes number 4 and 5 come in, Titania and Hildren. The order in which you get them can be interchangeable, however, I'd argue that you should be getting both, and here's why. Titania excels at mobility-based content like assassinations, captures, Perita Rebellion, and missions where getting in fast and dealing precise sustained damage is what wins. Hildren, on the other hand, is built for the opposite. Defense, interception, Descendia, and anything where you're holding a position under relentless fire. One thrives through movement and the other through sheer strength. They cover totally different ends of the mission type spectrum, which is exactly why both of them earn a spot on this list. Talking about Titania first, her fourth ability, Razor Wing, transforms her into a miniaturized fairy form. She becomes airborne, flying freely through any tileset, wielding her exalted pistols, the Dex Pixia. In this form, two passive survivability mechanics kick in simultaneously. First, her small profile gives her a 50% evasion, making her genuinely harder to target like a flying mosquito. Second, she releases Razorfly drones which divert enemy attention. On top of that, her first ability, Spellbind, adds another layer to her survivability. When you self-cast the ability by holding it down by default, Titania herself gains status immunity, meaning she cannot be slowed, stunned, knocked around, or afflicted by any status effect for its duration. So between the evasion, the drone aggro diversion, and the status immunity on demand, Titania has three independent survivability tools running simultaneously. You basically have a frame that survives a combination of being nearly impossible to pin down and being immune from status ailments. Titania is great at assassination missions. She can position freely, avoid ground-based mechanics and AoE zones entirely by simply flying above them. And the Dex Pixia with a proper build deals some of the highest sustained secondary DPS in the game. Same principles apply to any missions where fast, decisive kills matter more than outlasting a wave. For non-Steel Path Fisher missions, slap in Gauz's Thermal Sunder over Titania's third ability and you'll have a relic cracking machine which flies over the entire tileset, just thermal sundering your way to the extraction while getting reactants on the way. This setup is also great at nuking enemies on any non-Steel Path mission. And for the Perita Rebellion, I would say that Titania is one of the best frames specifically because of her razor wing. The Perita's tile set and 800 plus meter distances between objectives make ground-based traversal painful. Titania simply ignores all those problems. She reaches each order faster than almost any other frame, and her Dex Pixias paired with the Generic Focus School handles all the boss fights pretty easily with the right build. Once she clicks for you, she is completely fluid. You're not fighting the game system anymore, you're flowing through them. And this brings us to the final piece of the toolkit, Hildryn. If Titania wins through mobility, Hildryn wins by simply refusing to die in place. Hildryn is mechanically unique. Her abilities use shields as their resource instead of energy. Her energy pool is both her offensive fuel and a defensive tank simultaneously. She has one of the highest base shield values in the game, and every ability she casts is fueled by that same pool she's also using to absorb damage. This, firstly, makes her a viable choice for hijack mission types. What makes her endgame ready is Pillage. This ability sends out an expanding radial pulse that strips a percentage of enemy armor and shields, then converts what is stripped into overshields for Hildryn. In one ability, you're removing the primary reason steel path enemies are durable while simultaneously replenishing your own defenses. Cast it twice and most armored enemies are fully stripped, and it cleanses all negative status effects from Hildryn on every single cast. Her survivability loop is exceptional. When her shields break, she gets a 3.5 second invulnerability window during which you should fall back somewhere safe, and once shields start to regen after the window ends, you only need about 200 shields to cast Pillage again and you'll get back all your shields. The main damage for her comes from Aegis Storm paired with the Aegis Gale Augment, which gives her Balefire an alternative fire while airborne. These rockets scale their damage with Hildryn's maximum shield capacity, which means the tank stat increases the damage stat of the Balefire. And Balefire can also equip Arcanes, including Secondary Innovate, which pushes her into reliable crit territory and dramatically increases her damage ceiling. In Descendia, Hildryn's combination of ranged burst through Balefire, area denial through Aegis Storm's enemy suspension, and self-sustaining shield economy makes her one of the most comfortable frames to run through its rotation of randomized challenge types. She is, in the most practical sense, a fortress that can shoot. In any mission where you need to hold a position under sustained fire, like defense, mobile defense, interception, excavation, Hildryn does it better than almost anyone. But here's where both Hildryn and Titania really shine, and this is honestly one of the biggest reasons they both earn a spot on this list. In Elite Deep Archimedia and Elite Temporal Archimedia, the game can mandate specific weapons or warframes for certain tasks, and this is where a lot of people hit a wall. You might have the weapon unlocked for MR purposes but never actually built it because there are no formers to invest, no catalyst install, and also there are hundreds of different weapons in this game and you simply haven't gotten around to it. Titania and Hildryn sidestep this problem entirely. Both of them use exalted weapons as their damage dealing tools. The Dex Pixia for Titania and Balefire for Hildryn, which are built once, modded once, and taken into every single EDA and ETA run regardless of what the weapon tasks mandate. You're never scrambling to build something last minute just to participate. And honestly, the final reward in EDA and ETA isn't always worth forcing. The earlier rewards are where the real value is, and if your loadout isn't set up for it, you're just making your life unnecessarily difficult. Titania and Hildryn let you comfortably clear everything up to that point, take your rewards, and leave without feeling like you missed out. But let's say a particular week's EDA or ETA is just brutally difficult, the modifiers are stacked against you, the tasks are awkward, and even your best builds are struggling. This is actually where Revenant comes into the picture. Remember that Mesmer skin mechanic we talked about earlier? With an augment called Mesmer Shield equipped, when Revenant is within affinity range of his teammates, he can give 5 Mesmer charges to them, meaning your entire squad gets that same damage absorbing immortality that keeps you alive through the story quests. You're not the one dealing damage that week, and that's totally fine. You're the reason your teammates aren't dying. You're letting them do their job while you make sure nobody gets wiped. You would play a pure support role for the week, and honestly one of the most underrated roles you can play during these brutal weeks where the modifiers just aren't in anyone's favor. So between Titania, Hildryn, and Revenant as a fallback, you have an answer for every version of EDA and ETA the game throws at you, no matter how punishing the weeks get. So to recap the progression, You start with Vault, clearing the starting star chart, running ESO, completing bounties on Cetus, Fortuna, and Deimos while also getting Revenant unlocked in the process. You build Revenant to actually survive the story content and push into Steel Path progression without constantly fighting your own build. Korra is your resource engine and also your nuking frame. Farming survival missions for materials using Korra becomes a breeze. Titania slots in for mission types like assassinations, captures, fissures, Verita Rebellion, and anything that rewards fast, decisive movements over sustained tanking. Ilrin rounds out the toolkit as your immovable shield fortress for contents like defense, interception, Descendia, and much more. Once you have these 5, you can then start building up Warframes for every other game mode types like Wukong for spy missions, or maybe a Limbo for protecting excavators from getting damaged, or maybe a Necros as an alternative to Korra if you don't want to be the primary damage dealer during loot runs, or maybe a Speed Nova to finish defense missions on Steel Path even faster. The game mode opens up into this massive buffet, and you'll have the resource and knowledge to take on any of it. And that's the 5 frames that I'd recommend if you're starting or in the mid game of your Warframe journey. Bolt, Revenant, Korra, Titania, and Hildren. Not because they are the only strongest frames in the game, but because together they cover every layer of progression from your first capture mission all the way to endgame content that most players find it hard to reach. If this video helped you, please drop a like as it genuinely helps out the channel. And if you're new here and want more Warframe guides like these, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. Let me know in the comments which frame you're currently working on or which one surprised you most being on this list. Also, let me know what frame combinations you use to get to the late game. It could help other viewers if they don't agree with my list. And if you want a deep dive into any of these, full build guides, mission specific guides, ability breakdowns, let me know in the comments as well. Until then, see you in the next one, Tenno.